So welcome to Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. I'm Paula Gloria, and we're back for part 2 with Webster Tarpley, and he's going to talk about the importance of understanding exactly who Giuliani is and what's happened with the recent media frenzy. Even Hannity and Combs, I believe you said, Webster.
Yes, Paula Gloria. What we're talking about, of course, is on the morning of May 29th, the New York City 9/11 Truth Squad, which means the We Are Change group of Sabrina Rivera, Luke Rudowski, Tom Foti, Matt, and Nate, a very competent group, followed Mayor Giuliani from the Bronx to Brooklyn to Staten Island. The mayor was attempting to gather $500,000 of campaign loot to fill his coffers for more demagogic TV ads and so forth as he conducts his presidential campaign. And of course, he's supposedly the Republican front runner. He is, in many ways, on track to become president of the United States, I'm afraid. If people in New York City can remember what it was like under Giuliani, how oppressive, how the First Amendment counted for nothing. I can remember he was trying to shut down the sidewalk artists, people who would draw pictures on the sidewalk with colored chalk. Giuliani thought that was a threat to public order, and all the police brutality, all the abuses that went on under Giuliani would then be visited on us at the federal level. This is a person who obviously considers himself Mussolini on the balcony. We know that his father was some kind of mafioso, some kind of an organized crime figure, and it seems to me, if you think back to the recruitment of Lucky Luciano and the mafia by the OSS under Wild Bill Donovan, the CIA, in effect, what you're dealing with here is sort of the meeting point of the mafia with the intelligence community and the CIA, and that is something you do not want to put into the presidency. But of course, now how do you get this across? Giuliani's running as Mr. 9/11, the great September 11th crisis manager, the great leader of the city, somebody who could put on baseball caps that said NYPD and FDNY and so forth, and strut and pose and mug in front of the television cameras. That's the myth. But what we're engaged in doing is going beneath the myth. Now, in the intervention that Sabrina Rivera did, she was able to expose Giuliani's lies concerning what he was doing on the day of 9/11, right? There's, of course, the story, what he told Peter Jennings of ABC News on September 11th, on the broadcast that day, was that Giuliani was operating at 75 Market Street when he was told that the World Trade Center was going to collapse. And what he told Sabrina Rivera, you can see all this, WNBC TV, Channel 4 has it up on their website. They very helpfully give you the chord of what he said that day, Giuliani, compared to what he said in the Bronx on the 29th of May. On the 29th of May, Rotten Rudy tells Sabrina Rivera, I didn't know the towers would collapse. Nobody thought the towers would implode. We thought they might collapse after a long period of 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. Now, you can follow all of this at WNBC TV Channel 4 website, WCBS TV Channel 2 website. This entire thing was put on the Hannity and Combs program on the Fox News channel on the evening of May 31st. And it's interesting there that, of course, Hannity says, oh, this should be banned, these people should be shut up, they should be gagged, muzzled, carted off, Guantanamo, whatever it is. But Combs, Alan Combs, the so-called liberal of this group, says, no, Giuliani running for president on the 9/11 issue and great crisis management credentials, that Giuliani has opened up this issue, and he's fair game, and people should be able to ask him about this. Of course, Combs said, naturally, I don't mean conspiracy theories or things like that, but the rest of it, his management, his failures, his successes, all of this is fair game. And they had a woman from the Democratic Party consultant community here in Connecticut Avenue and K Street and so forth, and she said, yes, of course, this is all fair game. So the issue here is 9/11 Truth Squads, right? We're in the period of retail politics. Retail meaning 24 candidates running around New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina, and Nevada, And this phase goes on until the first week of February. 24 candidates running around in these little places in New Hampshire. This simply cannot be controlled. And what we've seen now with the macaca moment for Senator Allen of Virginia last August was that just one person with a camcorder or even a cell phone asking questions, or maybe not even saying anything, can get a candidate like George Allen of Virginia to self-destruct. Remember, he started yelling, macaca, macaca. That lost him the election. That lost the Republicans the Senate. And that is one of the things, even though the results are obviously a mixed bag, to put it mildly, this still represents progress compared to what we would have had if, say, the Bush Republicans had won the November 06 election. In that case, there would be really nothing left for the U.S. So lots of fine young people have been intervening. 9/11 Truth Squads, there's a website, 911truthsquads.com. You can see that there. It's a clearinghouse of all the interventions that have been done in Texas, in California, in New England, in upstate New York, now in the Bronx, all sorts of other places. In Iowa, activity has now begun. But so in the previous program, we went through in some detail the lies and distortions of Giuliani about what he did on the day of 9/11. This big question, did he get a warning that the towers were going to come down when the people in the South Tower were not told that the South Tower was coming down? They were told the opposite. They were told, stay where you are, don't worry, nothing is going to happen, our building is secure, and hundreds of people died as a result of that. And these are questions that Giuliani has to answer. He's also got to answer the question about whether the New York City drill, Red X, that was carried out in May of 2001, was the basis of 9/11. And this was a drill in which they drilled a plane crash and the collapse of a building. And that obviously raises the red flag when you see a drill scenario, and then that scenario goes live, takes place in the real world. You have a very strong suspicion, and really a prima facie case, that the real world event was generated through the drill, that the real life event was bootlegged, smuggled, conduited, conducted through the drill. But now we want to shift our emphasis a little bit. We want to look at after 9/11. That is to say, as soon as these events had taken place, what was the issue? Well, it's clear what the issue was for Mayor Giuliani, and that was to destroy the crime scene. It was to immediately begin an operation of carting off all the steel, all the debris, all the wreckage and ruins of World Trade Center 1, 2, 7, 6, and the buildings around there, the Marriott Hotel, and the rest of these buildings. His goal was to destroy what remained of those building collapses. Now, let's just look into it. This was not done openly. Thomas Van Essen was Giuliani's hand-picked fire commissioner. And he says that within a couple of days after 9/11, a full-blown recovery operation was underway. The site had become an enormous construction zone. Trucks and plows rolled around everywhere. Giant cranes lofted massive steel beams over the heads of the men below. And you know what this was? The steel was sent to Fresh Kills, Staten Island, a salvage yard, and then it was recycled, meaning that it was sent to China and India to be melted down, smelted. The story is, of course, that a lot of that steel is now in your pocket. If you have a paper clip in your pocket, you probably got a piece of the steel of the World Trade Center. Now, what's the problem with that? The first problem with that is it is a violation of federal law. It's a felony. Mayor Giuliani is guilty of a felony. He orders the agencies of the city of New York to violate the National Transportation Safety Act. Now, what is the National Transportation Safety Act? Let's illustrate it. We're going now to switch to the House Science Committee in Washington. on March 2nd, 2002. And I, of course, got to tell you, I'm using here as the basis of this my book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in USA, which of all the 9/11 books has the most on Giuliani, the most on his demagogic playing of the policeman against the fireman, and vice versa, his scoop and dump operation on the building site, the so-called pile, and related issues. 9/11 Synthetic Terror has, I think, the best account of this. I'm probably closer to the city of New York than most of these other authors, my uncle having been a New York City cop. So here's what we say. We're getting testimony here, House Science Committee, March 2002. Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York, Democrat, not a Maoist or something. So he says, look, when Flight 186 crashed in Rockaway, Queens, on November 12th of 2001, the word was the National Transportation Board seized control of the scene, and they would go in there, and the National Transportation Board would tell the New York City Police, the New York City Fire Department, any state of New York authorities, they would point to a piece of wreckage and say, you point to a piece of evidence and you say to local law enforcement, don't touch this or it is going to be a federal felony if you do. You're not allowed to move, tamper with, adjust, or otherwise interfere with a crash site in commercial aviation in the United States of America unless and until the entire National Transportation Safety Board survey has been done. Now, Mayor Giuliani, of course, unilaterally declared, oh, no, this cannot be considered the crash of an airplane, passenger aircraft, which he claims it was. But Murray says what we're going to do is we're simply going to override all of this. Everything that's mandated by federal law goes out the window. Now, this is an interesting thing. The National Transportation Safety Board is in effect before 9/11. It's in effect after 9/11. In November of 2001, when that plane came down in Rockaway, Queens, National Transportation Safety Board rules the roost. But on 9/11, no NTSB, no National Transportation Safety Board, because Mayor Giuliani has decreed that federal law does not apply. Well, you don't get to do that. That's a federal felony. You're indicted, you go to jail. And that is actually where Giuliani ought to be at this point, rather than running around saying that he's going to be the next president of the United States. Now, he brings in Loiseau. Loiseau is a controlled demolition company. It's very interesting. Loiseau is the controlled demolition company with ties to the U.S. intelligence community that was brought in to complete the demolition of the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City from events taking place in the previous decade. Now, Giuliani says, this steel that we have here is scrap metal. It's worthless. Let's just put it on trucks. We'll take it out to Fresh Kill, Staten Island. We'll get it on freighters. We'll send it to the Far East, and that's the end of that. We got to do this as fast as we can. His cover story here is Giuliani says, I want to be the greatest crisis manager. I want to show that I'm efficient. I'm not bureaucratic. I get things done. I clear away all the debris, and I get the stock market open again. Now, there's a whole other track of this thing which I can't follow today, but it's very dramatic, and it's his proclamations. The air is safe to breathe. Everybody come back to Wall Street, reopen the stock market, get business going again, open for business as usual. And hundreds and probably thousands of people have now got permanent, sometimes life-threatening health problems as a result of this. I'm going to follow the wreckage, because I think this leads to the criminal question of 9/11 itself. On the one hand, Giuliani says, this is scrap metal, it's not worth anything. But for some reason, he says every truck that carries one of these steel beams from World Trade Center 1, 2, 7, and so forth has to have a global positioning system transponder put on it so we can always know exactly where that truck is going. Now, what is that? It's low-grade scrap metal, he says, practically worthless. He's made a contract with Controlled Demolition and others that says, get rid of this stuff as fast as you can. The main thing is make it quick. We're going to give you a special discount price because you're going to do it really quick. But then he's got to have a GPS tracking system on every truck. The idea being that he doesn't want any of this steel to fall into the hands of a researcher, because, of course, the steel is the evidence of controlled demolition. The controlled demolition through classical methods, that is small explosive charges put at key points in the static structure of the building, and thermite or thermate. In other words, the special very high temperature explosive, which is instrumental in cutting through the steel columns, the 45 plus steel columns in the center of the building. Instead of having an oxyacetylene torch come in and cut each one of those individually, they had all been equipped with thermate in order to cut them according to a computer-generated plan, and that is, of course, the origin of the spectacular collapse that you see. Now, there's another thing Giuliani says. He's writing in his book, Leadership, which is his self-congratulatory memoir written in 2002. He says, in one of my visits to the World Trade Center site, I saw that lots of visitors were taking pictures of the site. Oh, Giuliani says, I found this really troubling. I noticed a disturbing phenomenon. Hundreds of people carrying disposable cameras and handheld video cameras. I understood their impulse. This was a historic event, and experiencing it up close had a tremendous impact. At the same time, this was a crime scene, and a dangerous one. I didn't want anyone to get hurt or to damage evidence as they scouted out the best angle for their snapshots. If we didn't do something about it immediately, it would soon be out of control. It would be a voyeur's paradise, and we risked the site becoming a distasteful freak show. So what does he do? He bans all pictures, no photographs of the World Trade Center site. In other words, if you want to create an independent photographic documentation of the crime scene beyond the control of Giuliani and his friends at the FBI and the CIA, oh no, horrors. So he promulgates this order. All photos are illegal in the area around the World Trade Center complex. And if you take a snapshot, you go to jail. Now this is amazing. So you see his concern again is to cover up the controlled demolition. Some couple of pictures did get out, like you see these columns that have been severed on a perfect 45-degree angle where the thermate device was attached to them. And you can see this, and it's clear that it's done as if by a cutting torch, and of course it's all done very, very quickly. This essentially proves the issue of controlled demolition. Then we get to the even more tragic part. Giuliani now says, we've got to get out of here as fast as we can. We've got to send all the steel to Staten Island. Well, what's the problem? Is that hundreds of firemen, policemen, New York City firemen, New York City policemen, Port Authority policemen, office workers, people working in the janitorial staff, people working in the restaurants, cafes, shops, and so forth. All sorts of people have been killed, and the human remains are mixed in with the steel beams and other stuff that is now in the pile of debris in the World Trade Center area. So, from a humanitarian point of view, you'd have to say, well, we have to have a overriding humanitarian concern about the victims, their families, Christian burial or burial for the people involved. But now, Giuliani says, no, the only priority is to get them out of there. And this is the origin of the infamous scoop and dump. He's got a whole media system supporting him in this stuff. He says, look, we are going to scoop and dump this stuff. We're going to scoop it up, take it to Fresh Kills, dump it there. It gets people to testify that there are no human remains left that are recognizable, that they've all been destroyed and burned beyond all possible recognition by the fire. And what he's doing here is two things. First of all, his goal, indeed, is to destroy this evidence with a scoop and dump method. But he's also got this now. He realizes that the firemen, out of all of these people, the firemen are the ones who know the most. Because the firemen are the ones who have observed the fire from the inside. They know that the fire in the South Tower was about to go out, just as the building begins to collapse. We have the testimony. We have, obviously, he has been able to hear all of these radio reports that were made public in the summer of 2005. He knows that the firemen have essentially the main outlines of the controlled demolition. One kind of testimony from firemen saying, we heard explosions, we heard a series of explosions, we heard things go pow, 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 pow. The firemen, by and large, are the largest organized repository of this. If the firemen as an organized group come forward and say this was controlled demolition, then the entire world historical strategy of the British U.S. finance oligarchs, that is to say the crash of civilizations, the war of civilizations, the attack on Afghanistan, the attack on Iraq and now Iran, all of this gets thrown into the trash heap if the firemen come forward. So what he's got to do is tie the firemen up in knots. He's got to essentially do things that are so outrageous, so heinous, that the firemen essentially, they just get piled up emotionally and cannot proceed. Now, the idea is what the firemen want to do is they want to have people on the pile observing, so that if you pick up a beam and there's the body of one of their fallen comrades, that they can then proceed in a respectful and humanitarian way to take care of these remains. But that, of course, takes extra time. It also means that firemen have got to be there on the site. So what Giuliani starts to do is to say, oh no, that's too many people. We're going to have meetings. We're going to have limits to the number of firemen that are there. Other psychological operations are done against the firemen at the same time. The Atlantic Monthly, under this guy Langewishi, who is a kind of provocateur of the magazine writing world, they come up with these stories. The firemen are thieves. The firemen were stealing blue jeans. The firemen were looting. The firemen this. The firemen that. By the time we get to the end of October, Giuliani declares that, and he does this unilaterally, there's an upper limit of 25 firefighters on each shift on the pile, along with 25 policemen and 25 Port Authority patrolmen. And what he's been doing is playing the policemen against the firemen against the construction workers, each group against the other two. Now we begin to get then people from the Firemen's Union, and these people, right now, they've condemned Giuliani. They've said he should not be president. The head of the Policemen's Benevolent Association of the city of New York, Patrick Lynch, has said that Giuliani should not be president of the United States. But what we've got then is union officials start complaining that what Giuliani is doing is a haphazard trucking operation to fresh kills, and this amounts to scoop and dump. Now, Giuliani says, safety is the reason. I'm completely sincere about this. He begins to say the problem is that the firemen are running wild on the pile. The apex of this campaign is Friday, November 2nd, All Souls Day, the Day of the Dead, ironically enough. 1,000 firemen and family members come to the World Trade Center pile, and they start chanting, bring the brothers home, bring the brothers home, do the right thing. Rudy must go, down with Giuliani. Tom must go, down with Van Essen, the hand-picked stooge fire commissioner of Giuliani. They got signs saying, Mayor Giuliani, let us bring our brothers home. And the question is, that Giuliani knows exactly what he's doing. And what this becomes is then a riot. It becomes a mass brawl mob scene, an altercation between the firefighters and the police. He's successfully played the police against the firemen. 12 firefighters are arrested and taken to jail. 5 policemen go to the hospital with injuries. And it's very interesting because, you can hear Bush and these other Republicans saying, or a lot of people say, after 9/11, the United States was so wonderfully united. It brought us together. We were all together after 9/11. Well, Giuliani doesn't care about that. He gladly sacrifices national solidarity by provoking a brawl between the firemen and the policemen as part of this campaign of psychological warfare. Obviously, on the one side, to destroy the physical evidence in the form of these steel beams, but also to knock out the firemen because they represent the eyewitness testimony to the fact that explosions had gone off. Now, one of the leaders of the Firefighters Union, Peter Gorman, says Giuliani is a fascist. Let's remember that. Union leader Peter Gorman, New York City Fire Department, Giuliani is a fascist. And he refers to Kerrick and Van Essen, Kerrick the police commissioner, Van Essen the fire commissioner, Giuliani's goons. So that's the brawl on November 2nd, 2001. Go back and look it up. On Monday, November 11th, there's a meeting of 200 angry firefighters, bereaved families, and Giuliani at this meeting, he is accused again and again of running a scoop and dump operation. One widow cries out, "Last week my husband was memorialized as a hero, and this week he's being thought of as landfill." And Van Essen, Giuliani's stooge, says, "Oh, we're overwhelmed." And the widow says, "Stop saying you are overwhelmed. I am overwhelmed. I have 3 children, and my husband is dead." Giuliani has a stooge from the New York City Health Department, Dr. Hirsch, comes home and says, "Oh, there are no human remains left, only biological stains because of this tremendous fire that was going on." But of course, the firemen know that that's not true because they've seen that intact bodies are still being pulled up from the site. So this proceeding was then condemned in congressional hearings, and we've heard a little bit of it, but the general word from the Congress is that this is borderline criminal. What Giuliani is doing is borderline criminal. Let's look at this for a second. We're back here with Congressman Anthony D. Weiner, Democrat of New York City. It's clear that the Giuliani administration, just like the Bush administration, is hostile to any investigation, so much so that when the Federal Emergency Management Agency Building Performance Study Team, right, the BPAT it's called, this is the Building Performance Assessment Team.
We have 1 minute, Webster.
This is the group that's supposed to see, how did things go. When they get to the pile, to the site, the New York City authorities don't let them in. Let's just give the quote from Weiner. "We just heard testimony that the city of New York was the opposite of cooperative. They refused to provide basic information. They refused to provide the blueprints of the buildings. They won't let people on the site. They harass people from FEMA who are trying to do an investigation." So Giuliani is covering up. He covers up by destroying the steel, by trying to silence the firemen, by trying to keep the FEMA investigators out. There's got to be an investigation of Giuliani on this issue, and that has to precede any presidential candidacy on the part of this individual.
Thank you very much, Webster Tarpley. This is Paula Gloria with Farther Down the Rabbit Hole. And Webster, in the future, I hope we can go over in great detail the cover of your book. I have it on every show, but I think people would like to understand the logic behind it, and also on Pearl.
Buy the book and you'll understand the cover.
Okay. Thanks, Webster. Bye.